What about in terms of how literally you might take the Bible? Let's say,
Hmm.
would you stone adulterers? That's a common example.
The Bible doesn't teach Christians to stone adulterers.
Right. Well, I haven't read it, so let me. What is
But
it?
there are two different questions. How literally do you take the Bible? Well, you take it. Well, either you believe it's true or you don't. So there is this whole modern concept that some people are fundamentalists and they take the Bible too literally, and you should actually just use it as no. It's either you think it's true or you don't. Right.
I agree.
But the Bible is full of books. It is a library of books. Some of them are anecdotal. Some are allegorical. Some are poems. Some are stories. Some are just straight up advice. Some are rules and commands. And so I wouldn't take the poems literal in the same way that I take the list of commands literally. So the actual question doesn't really make much sense when you think about it properly. But I think what you're trying to get to is do you follow all the rules of the Bible, or should all the rules of the Bible be followed? And yes, but we have to remember that the new covenant fulfills the old. And so Christians aren't to live by the old law in the same way that Jews do. The Christian law is slightly different.
Oh, so you wouldn't take in some of the Old Testament bits.
Right. Some of the Old Testament was for the Jewish people, and some of the Old Testament was for a time and a place, whereas the entirety of the New Testament is for all Christians at all time. But it's not that the Old Testament has been replaced or removed, but it's been fulfilled and updated.
I see. I knew someone once who was trying to live for a year as though he took the Bible, but Old and New Testament literally, which was very difficult, obviously, to do in the modern age. If used to wind him up a bit by if she'd been on her period, she'd sit in all the seats in the house, so he had nowhere to sit when he got home.
But it's not something you do, because like the Old Testament says men should be circumcised, and the New Testament says, well, unless you were born Jewish, you shouldn't be circumcised. So and the Bible can't contradict itself, so we follow.
So I suppose he was just doing a sort of test and seeing what he could do. And he actually found he started to have, because he wasn't, I don't think, an atheist. He was just didn't really think too much about religion. And by the end, he did become religious just simply by adhering to all of the rules.
Do you know how common this is? And especially there have been a lot of journalists that have tried to investigate Christianity and tried to disprove it, and they always end up becoming Christian.
I don't know. I feel like I'd be the exception.
Try it.
You know what? Because I would love, and I said this to Lawrence as well when he came in, I said I would love to have that belief. And it sounds patronizing to say, and I don't know how to say it in a way that doesn't sound, but I would love it. I would feel so good about it.
It's freeing.
Oh, yeah. And then the next life, I can do the next thing.
I don't have to think about what's right and wrong. I don't have to think about what's good or bad. I have it in front of me. So I try to follow it. Following it is difficult, of course, but it takes me out of it. It's not about me. It's not about my personal wants, desires, my personal interpretation. It's about what God reveals to us and what the church teaches.
Is there anything that new information that could come to light that would make you no longer hold this belief?
That's like saying, could the truth ever become a lie?
You could find out, for example, that the Bible was written by like a prankster.
I don't think we could. I don't think I accept the premise of that, because I think we've understood that there was a time before we had a Bible, and we still had the Christian faith. The sacred scriptures come from sacred tradition. Like the faith was handed down to us from Christ himself, from God himself in the person to his apostles. And then we have something called apostolic succession, and they pass that composite of knowledge down to what we call the bishops today. And so it's been handed on generation to generation. And after a few years, they started to write it down, and we've got the scriptures for that reason. So I don't think that will be achievable.
Why were you suspended by GB News?
Because they're wet.
They're wet.
Yeah.
What does wet mean? Like it's like pathetic.
I mean, when they started GB News, it was set up as a good idea to give an alternative voice, alternative platform. We could probably find people who agree or disagree on whether they've achieved that, but I mean, the story is that my friend said something perhaps inappropriate but not illegal on air. He was punished for that and fired for that. The person whose show he was on, another friend of mine, was suspended because of that, for something that someone else said. And I said, well, look, we can't call ourselves the home of free speech and cancel two of our own guys for saying something that some people deem offensive but is very legal, and not breaking any guidelines. How can we be the home of free speech?
I mean, I agree with you actually on that, but I wonder if there is a limit somewhere. Is there something that a presenter on the TV show that would have been unbecoming of the channel that they could have said that was so
Sure,
offensive?
but then you have to have that limit explicitly somewhere, don't you? If there's a line, people have to know what that line is. And if that line is saying, I wouldn't shag that, then that's a very narrow line. And the problem was it was obviously a two-tiered thing, because there were lots of women saying the exact same thing on the BBC and across other mainstream platforms, and there were no consequences whatsoever. So
she had been, hadn't she? Ava Santana.
Yeah, but Carol Vorderman said it, and other people said it, and there were no consequences for them. But Carol Vorderman was the one who led the campaign. She said to people on her massive platform, press this link, fill out an Ofcom complaint, get these people fired. This is cancel culture. They don't like us. It's not about what he said. It's about who he is. And this is the problem. But for me, a company like GB News should back its people. And we should support each other. And we should stand for the principles that we say we stand for. Otherwise, they hold all the power. The enemy holds all the power. And therefore, there's no point existing. And now, since they fired the three of us, no one's going to speak up on that channel properly. They're only going to operate within that narrow field because they're going to be afraid of getting fired themselves and or the woke lot coming after them. And they know that whenever the woke lobby puts pressure on, that mob is going to have all the power, because the management of GB News have shown them that that's what happens.
You could say it's not a huge loss to GB News that their presenters can't make those kinds of comments about women.
No, I say it's a massive loss. It's a fundamental loss in that the platform no longer can call itself a free speech platform.
But as we said, there has to be a limit somewhere anyway. There has to be
but they still haven't shown what their limit is. And they've shown that actually, if people on the woke left don't like what is said, doesn't matter what it is, then they can get rid of you. So it's actually broken the idea of the channel.
I said to Lawrence, you shouldn't have said that. And I think he said that you told him he shouldn't have said
but
that.
that's beyond the point. Like, if he says something inappropriate, then either get him to apologize for it if he agrees that it's inappropriate, or find a sanction. But you don't fire him for it if just because a few people have taken offense, and then you don't fire the person whose show it was on for it. Either you don't fire the person who's saying that this is wrong to be firing these people for it. Like, it's just beyond.
That's what I think is a bit mad. And I mean, Dan was just sort of smiling.
Well, Dan had an awkward smile on his face. Yeah. Like, he's clearly, this is my friend. He said something inappropriate. What do I say in this moment?
Do I admonish him on live TV?
Do I challenge him now, or do I have a conversation later? Do I get him to apologize at the end of the show? You can see a million things going through his head at that moment. It's beyond ridiculous to fire him.
I feel like they wanted to fire him for some other things.
Absolutely, they did. Yeah. It's never about the thing that it's about, is it?
No, it's not. I've got another question to ask you, but first, tell me, where can people follow you and all of that stuff?
CalvinRobinson.com is the best place to find me. That's my Substack. But I've got a show with Lawrence Fox called Fox and Father. That's on Reclaim the Media on Thursdays at 7 p.m. I've got Calvin's Common Sense Crusade, which is the show that I originally had on GB News. That's now on thelotuseaters.com on Thursdays at 3 p.m. live. I do my Substack, and you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. All the social media is just Calvin Robinson.
Calvin Robinson. Easy to find. People do go and find him. Calvin, he's got great, interesting opinions, different to what you might expect anywhere else. So
perfectly ordinary opinions from 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, there's that as well. but good, interesting opinions, and not opinions that, there are opinions that a lot of people like myself might balk at immediately, initially, and then listen and go, okay, look, and you and I are never going to agree on God. I think that's
Don't say
just,
never.
We'll see. Well, you might come round. You're right. Right. So